Alright, so one of the coolest lights is the spotlight, and that's because it's used so often. So we went over the directional light, which is like your everywhere sunlight. We went over the area light, and the point light, which are good for localized areas. The point light works for things like campfires, light bulbs, certain types of lamps, and the area light works for different types of light sources and lamps where the light is coming from a flatter surface typically. It also works really well for TVs and monitors. And the spotlight, which is what we're about to create, is really good for um, sources that are funneled. So I'm just gonna pause that because I see it chugging, chugging, chugging. There we go. For right now, I'm going to turn this light off too, just to save some processing. Illuminate by default, turn you off. It's all right. We'll turn you back on later. And I'm going to create a spotlight. And the way the spotlight works is you could see it inside of this cone. And I'm rotating it around. I'm going to move it like right there. And let's just kind of even it off a little bit. -90. That's all good. Bring it down here. Actually, bring it up. And I'm going to scale it a bit so we can see. So we have the light cone, which is the shape. We have the light source inside of here. And I'm just going to bring it a little closer to the wall. So imagine a light fixture that's right out here. And we're getting this light here. Okay. I'm just going to do a save scene as, just in case it wants to crash on me again. New shed. And we're just going to call this one lighting. So I'm going to turn this on. Once again, you're not going to see any effect because remember, you need to actually go in and set up the parameters so it'll actually show bright enough. So I'm going to go and just jump all the way down to Arnold and open that up. But before I do that, let's take a quick look at what some of these parameters do. We have intensity, color, of course. We have cone angle, penumbra, and drop off. And let me turn it on so you could actually see what it's doing. So we're going to increase the exposure, not 15, let's try 16. There we go. So we've got this here, right? But this doesn't look very natural. It actually looks really, really sharp, like this cartoon kind of spotlight. We want it to look realistic. And this is what the shape is that we're seeing. So I'm going to scroll right back up, and I can adjust the cone angle to make it wider. I can adjust the penumbra angle to a positive or negative. What the penumbra is the edge of the light area. Going to a positive fades it outward. Going to a negative fades it inward. So if I just increase the penumbra angle, let's say by 2, maybe 3, you see it softened that edge out a lot more than what it was. It's better, but it's still not very natural yet. That's where the drop off comes in. The drop off is basically the intensity of the light from the center of the light cone going out to the edge of the light cone. So in reality, the hottest spot, the brightest area, should be at the dead center of this cone area. So as I increase the drop off, we see that we get that. We're getting this much stronger light in the center and then it fades out, and it's giving us a much more natural look now. And now I can do more fine tuning that I might want. I can change the color of it if I want it to be more of like a, colder, kind of blue light to match with outside. Maybe it's a warmer light. So maybe it's a white light. So you have to look at image references and decide. I can go in and I can start to adjust its exposure more so now. And now we see we're getting a much cleaner, more realistic. Let me push that back a little bit. So it's out of the light here, out of the moonlight. And we see we have a much nicer transition. The more I increase the drop off, the more it fades out as it goes in. Now it's still fairly consistent, and I can adjust that a few different ways. So first way is, remember, we could turn off normalize, and when I do that, this thing's gonna basically kind of go whoop. And sometimes if you don't see updates, you could just go render update full scene. And but we're not seeing anything, and that's because I have to increase the radius. And so when I increase the radius and start to pull that out, now we could see, once again, I have that control. If I go too far, it gets nuclear. You get weird artifacts and stuff like that. That's, wow, that's intense. Nice little light bloom going on there. But let's drop that back down because we don't want to cook people walking underneath the light. So we just drop that down a little bit, and we can now get the amount of control that we want. We can adjust how the shadows are being affected. And some of these we're not seeing because it's not really casting on an object. But we could see that there is some really cool stuff. Now, the other thing is that if I want there to be more of a decay, now when I turn this on, you notice it went out here, but it's not affecting this. And that's because Arnold doesn't really pay much attention to these. The other renderers do. This one isn't. So if I wanted to actually put an actual controllable decay, I'd go down to light filters. And where it says add, we could see there's one that is called AI light decay. And it creates it right in here. So now I can turn on like the far attenuation. Like, where does it start? 0 is at the light source. And where does it end as I start to increase this? See that? 150. I'm increasing where this decays off. So from the light source to out here. So I could actually say, oh, you know what? Let's say you're going to go to 400. And we see it there. Maybe it's too much. 350. 250. And we could see and really start to tweak this out immensely. Okay. If I wanted it to start further away, so this is kind of pushing it outward, but the near attenuation is if I wanted it to push it, like this is, oh, from the light source, this is at the end of the light source. So if I wanted it to start like at 50, you see it pushed it down. And where do I want that to end? So we have where the light source is. This is controlling at the close to the source. This is controlling at the end. And then we can adjust that from there. So just something to, or we could just shut that off and just make it blend out. But that is how you would actually be able to put your own decay in it and then literally fine tune that particular light and set it up the way you want it, which is really powerful.